قال المؤلف الإمام حجة الإسلام الغزالي رحمه الله ونفعنا به وبكم. Just continuing on the section of the second obstacle to purification, which was excessive mixing with people. If you remember last week, it was a discussion about the benefits of uzla, which means to seclude oneself or to withdraw from society. And we mentioned about the tension between that and the necessity to mix with people as well, which Islam does have strong recommendations of jama'ah, to be in jama'ah. So today he's going to continue, and you'll see the theme will come again. This type of you could say tension. And really it's a case of where to strike the balance. How to strike the balance. I think that's where it comes down to. So you see, Imam al-Ghazali today will talk more about that, and you see more about that type of sort of opposite pressures, and how do we strike a good balance in that respect. Because as we'll see, within the deen, within the sunnah, in the hadith, we find both recommendations. So how do we understand that? How do we join between that? So I think we got to the point where we said mentioned a story about Uwais al-Qarni, and mentioned like Ibrahim ibn Adham, when Sulaiman, he said, it's more beloved to me to meet Shaitan than to meet him. Remember? Yeah. I think we mentioned also that story about his Shaykh as well. There's a new translation of this book. Has anyone come across that yet? There's a new, very new translation. It came out after we started the book, by Mukhtar Holland, if anyone's interested. There was one that was published previously, but it wasn't exactly, it was parts of this book, but in a different order. But they've actually published it again recently, but the full version in the right order, all the chapters are the same and everything. So if anyone's interested, they can get hold of that. Mukhtar Holland. But make sure you don't get the old one. That was... Yeah, that's the old one, yeah. I think the old one had some parts translated, but and also in a different order, so it was difficult to follow. He'd put it into, just random chapters, I think. But this new one is just the whole complete book in the same order. Yeah. It's Mukhtar Holland. Yeah, I think I think the first one may have been just some translation of some sections, selected sections or something, possibly. Allahu Alam. Okay, just trying to remember where exactly we got up to last week, but I think we got up to here. فإن قيل فما الحكم فما حكم العزلة والتفرد عن الناس فبين لنا يرحمك الله حال طبقات الخلق فيها والحد الذي يجب منها. So correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we got up to here where it says, if someone was to ask, what is the hukam, the legal status, the legal ruling of uzla and tafarrud anin nas. So uzla literally means to withdraw, and tafarrud anin nas is a similar thing, which means to keep yourself alone. Tafarrud, from people. So withdrawing and isolating oneself, what's the hukam of that? What's the legal status of that? Is it recommended? Is it wajib? Is it permissible? Is it makruh? That type of thing. And is there a difference between different people? Do different people have different hukam in this regard? Yeah. For some people maybe it's wajib, some people maybe it's makruh, some people maybe it's haram for them to do that, you know. So he says, فَاعْلَمْ رَحِمَكَ اللَّهِ وَإِيَّانَا أَنَّ نَاسِكَ فِي هَذَا الْبَابِ رَجُلًا. So he says, no, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy on you and upon us, that people are two types in this regard. So there's two categories in this regard. رَجُلٌ لَا حَاجَةَ بِالْخَلْقِ إِلَيْهِ فِي عِلْمٍ وَبَيَانِ حُكْمٍ. So basically he's going to divide into two categories. He says there's one type of person that people do not have a need for him. They do not have a need for his knowledge. Yeah, they do not have a need for his knowledge. فالأولى بهذا الرجل التفرد عن الناس. So he says for this person it is better to remain isolated from people. Remain, in other words, not mixing with people. فَلَا يُخَالِطُهُمْ. So in other words, the next other person he's going to mention is someone who's an alim or someone who has knowledge of the deen, and people have a need for that, you know. So there's a need, so he shouldn't isolate himself, because he needs to impart that knowledge and to spread and to do da'wah and to call people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and so on. So that's the point he's trying to make here. فلا يخالطهم إلا في جمعة أو جماعة أو عيد أو حج أو مجلس علم بالسنة أو حاجة في معيشة لا بد من ذلك ولا يعرف. So this person, however, this person is not a scholar or someone who other people need his knowledge and so on. He should try to keep himself to himself and only mix with people in times like Jum'ah. Yeah, the Jama'ah, so the fard prayer where you go in Jama'ah in the masjid. Eid, obviously you come to, Hajj and so on, and Majlis Ilm. Yeah, so this person should attend circles of knowledge. He shouldn't isolate himself so much that he doesn't attend things which are beneficial for him. So these should be the only places where he comes out and mixes with people. And haja fi ma'isha, if he has a need in his livelihood, so to work, to earn money or whatever, things he has to do, the minimal that he needs to do to mix amongst people, he should do that. وَلَا يُعَرِّفْ وَإِلَّا فَيُوَارِي شَخْصَهُ وَيَلْزَمْ مَسْكَنَهُ. He shouldn't make himself known to people, you know. Introduce himself to people. I am so and so, and I've got this, and I do that, and so on. He should just try to keep private. In other words, so this is all to do with the dangers of society. You know, when society becomes corrupt, especially, it's the dangers of mixing out amongst people. You know. Yeah, I mean, that's different. Yeah, because he's not necessarily mixing with people there, is he? I suppose. Or I suppose you do meet, but just like, yeah. Allah Azim, I don't know. Can't be that specific, but I guess, I mean, if I was a traditional sheikh, I'd probably say you'd avoid that because of the bad environment. If you go bowling, there's like loud music always. There's obviously all sorts of other people there that are probably women dressed in bad ways and things like that, you know. But having said that, I do have taken my family bowling, and probably would do as well. So that's if I was a very traditional sheikh. But yeah, I mean, of course you have to take your family out. You have to, you know, take children out places. So just try to choose the best places that you can, I suppose. I don't like going bowling because of all the music and everything, loud music and stuff. But I think zoo. I think I don't like zoos because the animals are trapped in cages. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, but I think safari parks are okay because they're more free, aren't they? uh, anyway, yeah. So I mean, this is just general things, isn't it? You can take the family out for excursions. You don't have to mix with people, you know, in that situation, do you normally? Especially in England when people are so reserved, no one talks to anyone anyway. I mean, this country is so extreme in the culture, so reserved. You know, people never even say hello to each other or anything. In other countries, I'm sure you know if you meet people in the streets or in buses or something, you say hello or something. You know. I mean, I was working when I was working in Broadmoor, because outside of London, it's like a little village culture. When you walk past people, you always nod or say hello or something. You know, just people that you don't know. It's just normal. You know, and if you don't say anything, it's probably a bit rude. But in London, you don't. You know, everyone just ignores everyone. Well, I suppose it's because there's so many people as well. It's so crowded. You can't start saying hello to everyone. you, you'll probably be Anyway, so yeah, just keeping himself to himself. So he should, and even to the point, Imam Ghazali says, "Yuwari nafsa." If he's forced to meet people, he should just even disguise himself, his identity, no, in the sense of not really has to reveal too much about himself. Yeah, just no need to get too social. In other words, ويلزم مسكنه, stick himself to his house as much as possible. ولا يعرف ولا يعرف ولا يعرف. Shouldn't make himself known, and he shouldn't be made known. I mean, there are people. If you sit with some of the traditional sheikhs, like one of the sheikhs I sat with, he said, you know, some of the people he knew, the sheikhs, they live in Mecca, in the Haram, and they wouldn't let their children go out to the Kaaba even, you know, by themselves, because they felt that of the bad company they might come across, you know. So there are people who are very careful about these things, you know, and very much keep a very protected environment. Like I was saying last week, now, you know, the problem is we can't, even our houses are not safe now. We got infiltration there. So we have to be more careful and think very carefully what things are inside our houses as well, you know. Um, the other thing is, you know, I feel that one of the things, you know, often people have made mistakes, you know, in the past. Is people have thought if I bring my children up really well, like good Muslims, I teach them good morals and things. You know, the home environment is good for them. You know, inshallah they'll be fine out there in society. But I think people underestimated how strong is the influence of the society and the culture, especially the one that we live in here. You know, upon children, and it's just not. That's just even not enough anymore. You know, because if okay, your parents are pious and they've taught you good things, but then you're put into schools which are full of like drugs and gangs culture, you know, sexualization of teenage and young kids even nowadays. All of that, you know, the peer pressures. Then you have all the media, the films, the television, magazines. All of these things is just a huge influence, and you know, even the teachers at the school, you know, have got corrupt morals or not presenting a good example. So you know, the parents look like a very isolated individuals compared to the whole of the society around you. You know. So that's why I think you know we need to think as the next generation now think more carefully as well about our children, how we're going to. I don't want to repeat the same mistakes as people have made. You know, unfortunately, may Allah protect everyone. Um, you know, all parents try their best for their children, so it's not like blaming anyone or anything like that. but it's just, also learning from experience, mistakes, things like that. If you look at the normal schools in Hounslow, normal state schools, they're just full of, gang culture, drugs, all that, very, very corrupt morality and everything. That's what it is. I mean, I worked in child and adolescent psychiatry recently for 6 months, and we done a lot of liaison with local schools. So it's much worse than even when I was in school. 20 years ago, much worse now, and that was bad enough then. But it's much worse now. There's a real corruption of children, in terms of sexual behavior, especially. Real corruption at earlier and earlier ages. Um, so that's why I think it's important to be very careful about that. School, where you send your children to school, things like that. Um, فأما إن أحب هذا الرجل أن ينقطع عن الناس فلا يخالطهم في أمر من أمور البتة من دين ودنيا وجماعة وجمعة وغيرها لما يرى له في ذلك من مصلحته وفراغه فإنه لا يسع ذلك إلا بأحد أمرين. If this person, the one who doesn't need to mix with people on account of having to impart knowledge to them, if this person wants to completely divorce himself from the society even further, in terms of not even wanting to get involved in the jama'ah, in Jum'ah prayers, and so on, because he sees there's some benefit for him, for his his environment, his iman in that, he cannot do this unless he fulfills two conditions. So he cannot do this. إما أن يصير إلى موضع لا يلزمه هنالك هذه الفرائض. The only way he can do this is if he goes and lives in a place where these things are no longer obligatory upon him. The gatherings, Jum'ah and Jama'ah. In other words, he has to live by himself somewhere in the countryside or in the desert or in a mountain or something, all by himself, not in a town or a village. Because as soon as you're in a town or a village, it becomes fard to start attending some of these gatherings. So there's no Jum'ah for someone who lives outside in a Bedouin or. So there's people who've done that, like the scholars, Sheikh Hamza's teacher, Sheikh Murabat al-Hajj in Mauritania. They literally went out to live in the desert for this reason. They're not living there because they're Bedouins. They actually made a conscious move out into the desert to protect their deen, protect their environment. So they've been there for years and years, teaching and teaching and teaching, and they have students coming there, and they learn the deen and they transmit the deen. So that's why they're there, and they don't pray Jummah because they live in tents. كرؤوس الجبال وبطون الأودية ونحوها ولعل هذا أحد الوجوه التي دعت العباد إلى تلك المواضع البعيدة عن الناس. He says perhaps this is the reason why some of the worshippers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, meaning some of the famous people of Allah that have been written about, this may be the reason why some of them chose to live far away from people in these sort of places. وإما أن يتيقن بالحقيقة أن الضرر الذي يلحقه في مخالطة الناس بسبب هذه الفروض أعظم من تركها فحينئذ يكون له عذر في ذلك. The second condition or the second reason he may not attend Jum'ah and these sort of gatherings is if he is sure with certainty that the harm that will come to him from mixing with people by going to these gatherings is more greater than leaving them. In other words, if you don't go to Jumu'ah and Eid and places like that, the harm there because you're missing out a fard. But actually going to them become more harmful than leaving them, then he has an excuse as well. وَلَقَدْ رَأَيْتُ أَنَا بِمَكَّةَ حرسها الله تعالى بعض المشايخ المنفردين من أهل العلم وهو لا يحضر المسجد الحرام في الجماعة مع قربه منه وسلامة حاله. So Imam al-Ghazali says, I have seen myself in Mecca, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect the city. One of the mashayikh, meaning one of the people of knowledge, who was quite exalted in the level of his knowledge, but he would not attend the congregation prayer in the Masjid al-Haram, even though he was close to it, living quite close to it. And he was not in any like ill health or anything like that prevented him. فحاورته في ذلك يوما في حال ترددي إليه. And one day when I was visiting him, I actually brought this up. How can you miss the Jama'ah, which is, some say it's fard to pray in Jama'ah. With the Hanafis it's Sunnah Muakkada, but still a very strong. فذكر من أذره ما أشرنا إليه. And he mentioned to me that his excuse for not attending was this similar what we've just mentioned. The harm of that he felt was coming from the society at that time. وهو أن ما يجده من الثواب لا يفي بما يلحقه من الآثام والتبعات في الخروج إلى المسجد ولقاء الناس. So he said, the reward that I would get for going to the Jama'ah is negated or even more out of balance from the harm and the sin that I would incur by the problems that I will encounter and mixing upon the people. In other words, meeting people that may be backbiting or gossiping, or hearing people that are backbiting, or seeing things which are munkar and I can't do anything to change them. Hearing people raising their voices in the masjid, shouting in the masjid, fighting in the masjid. All these things, especially if you're an alim, then it becomes wajib for you to try to change them as well. قلت أنا وجملة الأمور فلا عتب على المعذور والله تعالى أولى بالعذر وهو عليم بذات الصدور. So Imam al-Ghazali says, my opinion here, he says, look, in summary, if someone has got some excuse that he's personally convinced, then it's between him and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepts the udhr, accepts excuses for things, and he's the one who knows best what is in the chests of men. So if this person is sincerely, the reason why he's not attending the Jama'ah is his sincere, certainty that he feels that harm to his deen is more, and it's not out of laziness or just, doesn't want to attend the masjid, then it's between him and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Of course, if it's someone who's too lazy to attend the masjid, but then he starts using these excuses, then that's not, obviously, he's not sincere with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's why I said, huwa alimu bidhati sudur. At the end of the day, Allah knows what's in people's hearts. We don't know. We can just only, if they're giving us these excuses, we have to just accept from the outward, ولكن الطريق الأعدل فيه هو الأول. But he says, however, the best way is the first one. That you withdraw from people and remain, but still attend those things which are obligatory, which is the Jama'ah, the Jumu'ah, the Eid, and those gatherings. So this is Imam al-Ghazali's opinion or advice that no, stick to the first way, because The second way is very dangerous, because you're leaving obligations upon you, and you're saying you have an excuse with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but it's very dangerous to take that position. بأن يشارك الناس في الجمعة والجماعات وضروب الخيرات. So go to the Jum'ah, go to the Jama'ah, go to other good gatherings, a gathering of knowledge or dhikr, etc. ويباينهم فيما سوى ذلك. But apart from that, then keep yourself to yourself. فإن حب الطريق الثاني بأن ينقطع عن الناس بمرة فسبيله الخروج إلى مواضع لا تتوجه عليه هذه الفروض فيها. Says if he's really convinced that he wants to completely be isolated from people, then the best way is, or the only way is, to go and live somewhere where these obligations are no longer upon him, to attend the Jama'ah and the Jum'ah and so on. Yeah. So Imam al-Ghazali, he doesn't like the idea of living in a town or a village or a city where there is masjid, where there is Jum'ah, where there is Eid, but then still completely isolating yourself in the house. He's not really allowing that, even though he said some notable people of knowledge have done this, and they have their excuse between them and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but this is not something that's advisable, especially to advise people. Yeah. ثم إن الطريق الثالث أن يكون مع الناس في مصر واحد. And the other thing to remember here, and he will hint at this later on as well, this idea of tafarrud, or withdrawing by yourself completely, is only for those people who have enough strong iman to be able to do that as well. And that's very important, because otherwise isolating yourself can become more dangerous if your iman is not strong enough to be able to cope with that as well. So it has to be someone really who's in a strong state of iman and dhikr, remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is like something that he does a lot, and ibadah. So these are for people who want to really withdraw for worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not for ordinary normal people who just, they may become more dangerous for them to isolate themselves, because shaitan may be able to get more of a grip on them in that case. And this will also be spoken about later on. ثم إن الطريق الثالث أن يكون مع الناس في مصر واحد ولا يحضر جمعه ولا جماعة لعذر يراه في ذلك من وزر أو تبعه عليه، فإنه يحتاج إلى نظر دقيق ووارد عظيمة حتى يسقط ذلك عنه وفيه خطر من الغلط. So he says, then the third way is the one that he saw from, this Shaykh in Mecca was doing. He said, you're in a town or a city, but you don't attend the Jama'ah, you don't attend the Jum'ah, because of something that you are convinced that there is a sin or a very dangerous aspect there. But he says this requires a very, very precise type of understanding, and it requires a very huge danger to prevent you from attending the Jama'ah and the Jum'ah and so on. And he says there's a great danger here that you may make a wrong judgment, and then you'll be ending up in a lot of sin, if you see what I mean. He says فَالْأَوَّلَانِ أَسْلَمْ وَأَحْفَظْ لَهُ. So the first two options are much more safer, Either stay in the town and go just to the Jum'ahs and so on, but don't mix otherwise, or go and live far away somewhere where you don't have to attend these gatherings. Wallahu waliyul hidayati bifadlihi. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who gives guidance by his blessing and generosity. وأما الرجل الثاني فرجل يكون قدوة في العلم بحيث يحتاج الناس إليه في أمر دينهم. So remember now the second category. We said people are of two categories. The second one is a person who is someone who is a person of knowledge, a person that other people need for their deen, to learn their deen and to also follow his example. لبيان حق أو رد على المبتدئ, or people require him for teaching them their aqidah, their belief, and to refute those mubtadi', those innovators, people who bring other beliefs or aqidas and try to deviate people. أو دعوة إلى خير بفعل أو بقول أو بنحو ذلك, or he's someone that is engaged in da'wah, calling people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, calling people to make tawbah, turning back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, either by action or by word. فلا يسع هذا الرجل الاعتزال عن الناس بل ينصب نفسه بينهم ناصحا لخلق الله تعالى ذابا عن دين الله تعالى مبينا لأحكام الله تعالى. So he says this person should not take himself out of society. He has to place himself amongst the people so that he may guide them, give them good advice, so that he may defend the deen of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from those intellectual attacks that take place, so that he may make clear to people what are the ahkam, the rulings of the sharia. وَلَقَدْ رَوَيْنَا عَنْ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ صلى الله عليه وسلم أنه قال إذا ظهرت البدع وسكت العالم فعليه لعنة الله. So in one narration from the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, if innovations become manifest and the alim remains silent, then let the curse of Allah be upon him. So this is, to do with the obligation upon the alim, the person of knowledge. It's an obligation upon him, to then speak the truth when it is required, and he's not able to keep silent. He's not allowed to withdraw himself. هذا إذا كان بينهم وإذا خرج من بينهم فلا يجوز له أيضا الاعتزال. So this is if he lives amongst the people, he can't then isolate himself. But if he doesn't live amongst them, so he himself goes and lives somewhere far away. See, I'm not sure here if there's a printing error. Because in my book it actually says if he doesn't live amongst them, then still he's not allowed to withdraw. But I think that la might be a printing error. Has anyone got the book on them here? No? You haven't got this particular bit, or have you got this bit? Okay, so they haven't really But does it say anything about that? Is if he's amongst them? What if he's not amongst them? Does it say? Still, it's not allowed. Allah Allah. ولقد حكي أن الأستاذ أبا بكر بن فورك رحمه الله قصد أن ينفرد لعبادة الله تعالى عن الخلق. It is narrated that one of the scholars, Abu Bakr ibn Fawrak rahimahullah, he wanted to isolate himself and devote himself to the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فبينما هو في بعض الجبال إذ سمع صوتا ينادي. He was in one of the mountains by himself one day, and he heard a voice calling out, يا أبا بكر إذا سرت من حجج الله أو حجج الله على خلقه تركت عباد الله تعالى. How did they translate that saying, by the way? Just wonder if... How did your Urdu one? Same or? Yeah, إذ سرت من حجج الله على خلقه تركت عباد الله. Yeah, I think that's one way to translate it, the way that he's done in that particular one. So he said, if you become one of the proofs of Allah, you became one of the proofs of Allah. Did he say that? Or?
When Allah has made you an authoritative guide of the proof, why have you come to us?
The other way I think it can be also read is إذ سرت من حجاج الله على خلقه. You become a proof of Allah against His people. Tarakta ibadallah. In other words, when someone like an alim leaves the people and goes by himself, he's become a proof against them. Yeah? On Yawm al-Qiyamah, he will be a shaheed against them. You see what I mean? So Allah alim, it can be probably read both ways, but both are the same. Meaning you've left the ibadallah, you've left the servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and gone by yourself. You know, either you were a proof for them to guide them or an authority for them, but you left them, or by doing that you've actually become a proof against them. You know, because you're saying that they're corrupt, and I need to go by myself. So you've become a proof against them. You've left the mercy that should be there for the Muslims. You've left that. You know, in other words. فرجع, he went back and lived amongst the people. وكان هذا سبب صحبته للخلق. And this was the reason why he then spent his time after that amongst people and teaching and, you know, guiding people and so on. وذكر لي مأمون بن أحمد أن الأستاذ أبا إسحاق رحمهم الله قال لعباد جبل لبنان. So he says, Ma'mun ibn Ahmad told me or mentioned to me that the Ustad Abu Ishaq one day, he said to the people who lived in the mountains of Lebanon, these Ubad, these people who used to worship Allah by themselves in the mountains, he said to them, Ya akalat al-hashish, taraktum ummata Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam في أيدي المبتدعة واشتغلتم ها هنا بأكل الحشيش. So he said to them, oh, eaters of grass or plants, you know, because they would go there, you know, live very simple, have no food and just eat like, you know, things like that and just worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The extreme zuhud, you know, abstinence, living in caves and things like that. So he said, you eaters of vegetation, you've left the ummah of Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the hands of deviants, in the hands of mubtadi'ah, in the hands of deviants, you know, and you've gone up there to eat grass and things like that. قالوا له لا نقوى على صحبة الناس. They replied to him, we don't have the strength, we're not strong enough to stay amongst the people. We're not strong enough to stay amongst the people. Yeah? Meaning in our iman, la naqwa, when our iman is not strong enough. وإنما أعطاك الله قوة فلزمك ذلك. You've got enough strength, you're strong enough, your iman is strong enough, that's why you have to go and stay amongst the people. Our iman is too weak, we're not able to do this. Huh? فصنف بعد ذلك كتابه الجامع للجليل والخفيف. So after this particular Shaykh Ustad Abu Ishaq, he wrote a book الجامع للجليل والخفيف. وكان لهم رضي الله عنهم مع غزارة العلم العمل الجم والنظر الدقيق في سلوك طريق إلى آخره. Okay, so that's the type of tension as well, you know. That some people of knowledge or ibadah, they feel they should isolate themselves and protect their own iman and protect their own deen. But at the same time, there's an obligation upon them to be amongst the Muslims and to guide others and to be an example for them, especially if they have knowledge, because they have to then protect them from the deviance and all sorts of different things. Then who's going to teach them, teach the people if they're not there amongst them? So there's that type of tension here as well. واعلم أن مثل هذا الرجل المحتاج إليه الناس في طرق باب الدين يحتاج في صحبة الخلق إلى أمرين شديدين. So such a person who has knowledge and of the deen or practice of the deen, and the people need him, the ummah of Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they need him. This person has to then stay amongst the people, and he needs two characteristics. He needs two things that to help him in this process of mixing amongst the people. أحدهما صبر طويل وحلم عظيم ونظر لطيف واستعانة بالله تعالى دائمة. The first thing that this person needs is a lot of patience. Because why now he's going to be mixing amongst the people, you know? And when society is corrupt, the people are going to be difficult. Yeah, people are going to harm him. People are going to he's going to find all sorts of problems, you know. People saying things or doing things or criticizing him probably, or you know, all sorts of things are going to happen. Harms are going to come to him from people. I remember once when we were studying with Sheikh Hamza Yusuf in a long time ago. I probably mentioned this before in one of the Rahla course, and he had, I think, a part of the cloth of the Kaaba, which he was showing people, you know, students. And then there was some other people nearby having another course, who was like a rival type of thing, a different, you know, not Ahl Sunnah, some other type of Jama'ah. And there was a rumor going amongst them that, oh, Sheikh Hamza, he's got like a rock from the Kaaba or something, and people are doing tawaf around it or something like that. You know, so all sorts of slander and things were going on about that. So these are sort of things that people can come to harm if they stay amongst people. You know? Yeah, and those are the type of people, they don't really want to. They don't have a desire to be amongst people as well. They're happy to be just with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know, they're happy to be alone. Like one of Sheikh Ibrahim al-Yaqubi, it's narrated from him once. He said, you know, if it was not for teaching and studying, I would never have met anyone. You know, I would never mixed amongst anyone of the people. But they put themselves into that thing because of it's an obligation. It's their jihad. That is their jihad. Their obligation upon them for the knowledge that they have. You know? So they have to have a lot of sabr with the ummah of Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Hilmun azim. They have to have a lot of forbearance. You know, similar to sabr as well, forbearance. When someone harms you, you don't have to react. You don't want to take revenge. You just, you know. وَنَظَرٌ latif, you know, just a gentle look, gaze. وَالسِّعَانَةُ بِاللَّهِ تَعَالَى دَائِمًا, and always seeking help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with dua and asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help them in the thing that they're doing. Okay, the second thing, وَثَانِيًا يَكُونَ فِي هَذَا الْمَعْنَى مُنْفَرِدًا عَنْهُمْ وَإِنْ كَانَ بِالشَّخْصِ مَعَهُمْ. The second thing they need is They should be amongst the people in their physical form, but with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in their inward or their spiritual state. فَإِن كَلَّمُوهُ كَلَّمَهُمْ. If people speak to them, they speak back to them. فَإِن زَاوَرَهُ عَظَّمَهُمْ عَلَى على قَدْرِهِمْ وَشُكْرِهِمْ. If the people come to visit this person, he should honor them according to their status, etc. That is in the deen as well, to honor people according to their status as well. Which many people don't realize. It is mentioned in Riyadh Salihin, Imam Nawawi, a hadith in which Aisha radiallahu anha, someone came to her and she, what do you remember? Anyone remember the hadith? One person came to her as like a poor person, and she gave him something like dates or something, and then another person came also, but then she greeted him in a different way or honored him in a different way. And she was asked about this, and she said, the Prophet ﷺ said to treat people according to their status, their status. So there are people of different status in the society. The whole Western culture is sort of negates that. They don't. It's not something that's looked upon favorably in the West, due to this idea that everyone is the same. So which, I mean, both extremes are bad, of course. There shouldn't be another extreme like you have in certain cultures where there's like castes, where people are of different caste, and if you're a low caste, you're a low life, you can never be. So Islam is not like that. Of course, Islam is different, but there is a status. So in Islam, anyone can go up to a higher status through knowledge, through taqwa, through bettering themselves. But there are people who have different statuses within the society, depending on their position, their knowledge, and different aspects, that come into that. In Imam Nawawi's book, he mentions knowledge, and also chivalry or bravery is another reason for someone to have a status as well. In traditional societies, you used to have people who were like ulul fadl, or they're like brave people that would be chivalrous people, or they would take care of poor people, oppressed people, the rights of others. These type of people also had a status, and then also with age you get a status. So elders should also be respected. So all of those, there is different things. Not everyone is not all the same.
Because the influence it will have on the tribe as well. It's not about bringing anything. It's about dawah.
Yep. So this person, he's dealing with people in the way that they should be dealt with, but all the time he's with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَإِن سَكَتُوا عَنْهُ وَأَعْرَضُوا عَنْهُ اسْتَغْنَمَ ذَلِكَ مِنْهُمْ. If the people turn away from him and they don't want to know him, he takes this as a favor. He takes this as a blessing, because now he's saved from that type of fitna. فَإِن كَانُوا فِي حَقٍّ وَخَيْرٍ سَاعَدَهُمْ. If the people are upon a good path and they're trying to do good, then he helps them. وَإِن سَارُوا إِلَى لَغْوٍ وَشَرٍ خَالَفَهُمْ وَهَجَرَهُمْ. If the people start wasting their time with idle chatter and bad things like backbiting, etc., or doing bad things, then he will resist that, and he will go against that and oppose that and stay away from that. بل رد عليهم وهجرهم إن رجا قبولهم. So he will actually, if they start descending into doing things which are against the Sharia, he will actually um, refute that and stay away from that. Yeah. These are some of the obligations upon people of knowledge, which are, if they see something munkar, they have to speak against it. If they can't change it with the hand, they have to speak against it. Um, so in Syria, there were some amazing sheikhs, older sheikhs that we heard about. They were older sheikhs, and if they saw anything, they would just say it straight away, to the people. See anything that's against Sharia. What's this? What are you doing here? This is wrong. So they had that they had that ability, and it takes courage as well. They have courage. Once it was, I remember Shaykh Al-Yaqubi was telling us once. Shaykh Al-Yaqubi, him and Shaykh Hamza once were in a gathering, and they were invited. This was when he was in America. They were invited to a walima or something. One of their students, from Zaytuna was getting married. So they asked the sheikhs, can you please come, we're getting married, can you please come, and if we'd like to request you if you can sing the burda for us. Which Shaykh Al-Yaqubi was saying was not really appropriate, to ask an alim or sheikh to come and sing in your wedding. But obviously they knew these guys, it's a different culture, then they don't really know, they're not doing it out of bad adab, they just, so they said, yeah, no problem, we'll come. And so they were there, Shaykh Hamza, Shaykh Al-Yaqubi. And Shaykh Al-Yaqubi saying, I was looking at the audience, a lot of women without hijab and all this stuff, And then it came the time and said, will you please sing the burda for us, to the two sheikhs. So Shaykh Al-Yaqubi said, I said on the microphone, I said, look, I'm not a singer. But we're not singers, And said, about women, please, he mentioned something about the hijab and covering up and all of that. But he said, yeah, we'll do that, but just clarifying here, we're not singers, And he said afterwards, Shaykh Hamza said to him, you're very brave, all that stuff. So it does, it takes courage as well. So this is some of the obligations that people have. And the more knowledge you have, the more the obligations come upon you. So if you see a munkar, you have to say something. You can't really remain silent. When people start remaining silent, when they see haram, that's when things get really bad. That's when the society will really get bad. When we see haram being done or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being disobeyed amongst our own community, I'm talking about Muslim community, because doing munkar on non-Muslims is not obligation. For non-Muslims, it's obligatory to call them to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but not to, do nahi al-munkar. But amongst our own community, Muslims, if we see haram being done and we don't speak, even if we can't change by the hand, if we don't speak, then things will deteriorate badly. Once I was in a gathering and there was someone of quite knowledgeable person with me, and there was a student. Well, they were both students, but one was a beginner student, one was an advanced student. And the advanced student, he was saying some things about someone that could be construed as backbiting. So this beginner student, may Allah have mercy on him, he said to the other guy, for him, this guy was almost like a sheikh, if you see what I mean. He said to him, brother or sheikh or CD or whatever, something respectful. He said, you can't backbite. That's backbiting. You shouldn't say that. That's backbiting. And that person of knowledge, may Allah have mercy on him as well, because his reply was, he said, look, brother, as long as there's people like you around, I'm very happy, to remind us, of doing these things. So it's very important to remind each other. It doesn't matter, who you are as well, or who the person is you're reminding, because ad-dinun an-nasiha. For who? Lillahi wa li rasulihi, and etc. wa li amatin wa a'immatihim. For the general people and for the leaders and the people of knowledge. Nasiha is for them as well. ثم يقوم بجميع حقوقهم من الزيارات والإيادات والقضاء الحاجات التي ترفع إليه. This person, this alim who is mixing amongst and living amongst the people, he has to also fulfill all the rights upon him that come upon him, from visiting brothers or sisters um, who are ill, for example, or people who invite him to their houses, etc. The Prophet ﷺ never refused an invitation, from anyone. So you can't think yourself above people or anything like that. They used to say even a slave girl could take the Prophet ﷺ by the hand and take him wherever she wanted. So the Prophet ﷺ never refused anyone. وَقَضَاءِ الْحَاجَاتِ, people who have needs, people who need help amongst the Muslims, you have to go and help them. All of those things. مَا أَمْكَنَهُ, as much as possible, of course. وَلَا يُطَالِبُهُمْ بِالْمُكَافَآتِ, he should not expect something back from people. If he does something, to expect something back from them. وَلَا يَرْجُو ذَلِكَ مِنْهُمْ, he shouldn't hope that people are going to give him gifts or people are going to give him money or things like that. وَلَا يُرِيهِمْ مِنْ نَفْسِهِ استيحاشا لذلك. He should not let them feel also that, deal with them in the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Make them feel welcome, make them feel comfortable. Don't make people feel, that he doesn't dislike something about them or anything like that. وَيُبَاسِطُهُمْ بِالْبَذْلِ إِذَا قَدَرَ. If he himself has got means or money, then he should be generous amongst them, give to them if he can, if he has the ability. وَيَنْقَبِضُ عَنْهُمْ فِي الْأَخْذِ إِنْ أُعْتِيَ. And he should not take from people if they give him. He should just try to be independent. وَتَتَحَمَّلُ مِنْهُمُ الْأَذَى. If they harm him with their tongues or their actions or their attitude or their bad adab, then he should just take that and not want to take revenge or give them anything back or anything like that. Just take that as with a Muslim, you forgive them. وَيَظْهَرْ لَهُمُ الْبُشْرِ وَيَتَجَمَّلْ لَهُمْ بِالظَّاهِرِ. He should be pleasant amongst them, smiling, like the Prophet ﷺ, even though he was described as the most serious of people. He was always smiling when he was amongst his Sahaba, and his company was like easy, wasn't difficult, even though he was serious. His company was easy. And he should يَتَجَمَّلْ لَهُمُ بِظَاهِرِهِ. He should be also looking appropriately in his outward form. So this is the thing about alim or people who are involved in da'wah, to also dress appropriately, wear perfume if they can, things like that, look presentable, in other words, amongst people. وَيَكْتَمْ حَاجَاتِهِ عَنْهُمْ وَيُقَاسِيَهَا بِنَفْسِهِ. If he is in need or in trouble, he should try to just try to bear that himself and not put that upon people. Because part of, his status amongst them, he's someone that they're looking to as an example. So he has to have trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to fulfill his things, and not to ask